I was asked to come and say a little bit about Headspace, but I was also asked, as is often the case at these big events, to do a really quick meditation. I don't know how a quick meditation looks, so we're going to go relax, relax, relax. We're going to start with a little 3-minute meditation. How many of you have done some kind of meditation, mindfulness? Like a lot of you. I cannot tell you, when I finished being a monk and when we started Headspace about 10 years ago, we'd be lucky if 1 or 2 people put up their hands. Maybe there were more people that did it, but a lot of people were a little bit shy. Not many people had come out of the meditation closet 10 years ago. So for me, it's really comforting to know that more and more people are kind of taking this up. For those of you that haven't done anything like this before, don't worry, it's nothing weird. I'm going to talk you through the exercise. But there's 3 little things I want to share with you before we do this. How many of you have done Headspace, by the way? So I know. Quite a lot of you. Okay. In English? In German? Okay, German was our first. For those of you who don't know, we launched in Germany, or in German, a couple of months ago now in Berlin. It's the first foreign language that we've done it in. They asked me probably about a year ago, did I want to learn a new language? And I didn't feel very kind of confident in doing that. And then they told me they were going to planning to roll out sort of 5 or 6 languages in 2019, so I gave up. So if you listen to it in German, you don't have my voice. You have a very nice German lady speaking the narration. But there's 3 things that I'd like to share before you begin. Okay, the first one. For me, this is the biggest misunderstanding of meditation. The idea that just because you're about to close your eyes, that your thoughts are suddenly going to stop. So meditation, at least the way it was taught to me, it's not so much about stopping thoughts. It's more about being able to step back, to see thoughts clearly, and in doing so to create a little bit of space in the mind. So it's more about sort of a greater sense of ease with our thoughts rather than stopping thoughts. So number 1, do not try and stop the thoughts in your mind. Number 2, how many of you struggle every now and again to go to sleep? I guess is a good number of you, right? And what happens when you are struggling to go to sleep and you start trying to go to sleep? It gets progressively harder, right? So the more we kind of push into it, the more sort of stress we get. In the same way, you can't force sort of relaxation to happen. So there's no effort required in this particular exercise. And the last one. So very often in meditation, when we haven't done a lot of it, we try and project the idea of what we think meditation is onto the mind and onto the experience rather than simply allowing the experience to unfold. So as much as possible, just allow yourself these 3-5 minutes. This might be the only 3-5 minutes in your entire day when you get to do nothing. You don't have to check anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You have no responsibilities. So I'm assuming your phones are already switched off, but if you can just make sure that they are. We're going to dim the lights a little bit in here. And if you could set yourself up, sit however is comfortable for you. But ideally, I would suggest with your arms and your legs uncrossed. And I'd like you to begin, rather than closing your eyes straight away, just take a moment to settle in, excuse me, to the exercise. So start off with your eyes open, looking forward and trying to take in as much as you can of the space in front of you. So you can probably see without moving your eyes. You can probably make out the people either side of you, maybe even the ceiling, the floor. So it's a very soft focus that takes in the entire space. And just maintaining that focus. Just take 2 or 3 big deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. So as you breathe in through the nose, focus as much as you can on that feeling, the sensation of the lungs expanding, filling with air. And as you breathe out through the mouth, just letting go of any tension in the body, letting go of any thoughts in the mind. And with the next out breath, just gently closing the eyes. So in closing the eyes, almost immediately you're going to become more aware of the physical sensations. That feeling of weight of your body pressing down against the seat beneath you. Feeling the sensation of your feet on the floor. And the hands just resting on the legs. And probably becoming more aware of the sounds around you as well. Again, easy to think that sounds are an obstacle to this exercise, but as much as possible, bringing those sounds in, making use of them, noticing them. And then very slowly, just starting to become aware of the breath. So you don't have to breathe in any special way. The body knows how to breathe. Sometimes you might feel the breath in the chest, sometimes in the stomach, sometimes the diaphragm. If you can't feel any movement, just gently place your hand on your stomach. And we're just going to stay with that feeling of the breath, just for 1 minute. The mind will wander. It's natural for it to wander. But as soon as you realize it's wandered off, just noticing it, letting it go, and bringing the attention back to the breath again. Remember, natural for the mind to wander. Just notice when it's wandered, letting that thought go, and coming back to the breath again. And then just for a few seconds, I'd like you to let go of even any focus on the breath. Just let the mind do whatever it wants to do. Just for a few seconds. If it wants to think, let it think. And then just gently bringing the attention back to the body. Once again, coming back to that feeling of weight against the seat, the feet, on the floor, the sounds around you. And when you're ready, you can just gently open the eyes again. Okay. So, how many of you, just out of interest, how many of you feel different in some way, good or bad, than you did a few minutes ago? Okay, I'm hoping that most of those hands are good. But for those of you who might feel bad in any way, just a little reminder, okay? So very often, after taking a break like that, people will say, I feel more tired, or meditation makes me tired. So meditation doesn't make us tired. Meditation provides a space where we can stop and actually realize how tired we already are. Sometimes people say, meditation makes me think a lot. Meditation doesn't make us think a lot. Meditation allows us a space to see just how many thoughts there are in our mind. So it's really useful just to kind of always have that lens. So I was really lucky. I was 10, 11 years old when I learned meditation. I learned with my mum and my sister. The image may be kind of a sort of a hippie type family. It really wasn't. We're a very kind of regular family, but mum was quite progressive, going through a difficult divorce, having a tough time in life. and looking for a way to cope. And as kids, we kind of went along with her. And I remember telling a friend of mine, he was my best friend at school at the time, that I was meditating. It was my first time out of the meditation closet. I trusted my friend. He's a good guy. I turned up at school the next day, and everyone was sat on their desk, cross-legged, kind of chanting. And I quickly got back into the closet. And I probably didn't talk about it again with my friends until maybe I was like early 20s, something like that. And that was when I decided to go and become a monk. Now, the question I often get is why, or the two questions, why did you become a monk and why did you stop becoming a monk? So, why become a monk? There's probably a lot of different kind of factors involved. I was 18 years old and at a party one night, sat outside or stood outside a club when a drunk driver came down and crashed into a group of us and killed several friends and injured pretty much everyone there. There were 3 of us who didn't get hit. And I think when something like that happens in your life, and I'm sure you've all will have experienced kind of tragedy of some kind in your life, it's really difficult to know kind of how to process that, what to do with that. And for about 3 years, I tried all kinds of things. So I traveled a lot. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I kind of had somewhere in my mind the idea that maybe if I went somewhere else, I could leave those thoughts behind. But of course, wherever I went in the world, my mind sort of followed me there. I tried drinking. It was okay. Like, it worked for a few hours, but then you wake up the next day and you realize, okay, thoughts are still there. And so I really threw myself into sports. So I was a gymnast at the time. I was studying sports science at university. I was working as a personal trainer. And on the outside, at least, very kind of healthy. You know, but actually not feeling very content, not feeling any sort of sense of peace of mind. So I remember going to our head of sports science one day and saying, look, I genuinely don't think I'm going to find what I'm looking for here in the pages of a book, you know? And I told him, I explained how I felt, and he said, you know, I think you need some Prozac. You know, I think that's gonna help you. Some antidepressants are gonna help. And I thought about it a little bit, and I thought, actually, I don't think that's what I'm looking for. You know, so I made a decision at the time to go and become a monk, and I know that sounds like a huge leap, and retrospectively, maybe a little kind of drastic. But for me at that time, it made perfect sense, and it began a 10-year journey. Went off to Asia. I don't know if any of you here have ever considered that kind of lifestyle. I'm not here to sell it to you. It is an incredible experience, I have to say. There's very few situations in life, I think, where you can truly kind of go and experience quiet in that way. You have to give everything away. You have no belongings. So it's quite a liberating kind of feeling. I think as time kind of went on, as I say, I spent 10 years on that journey. Increasingly, I became aware that there were a lot of people who were struggling in life, who wanted to feel less stressed, who wanted to sleep better, who wanted to have happier relationships, but who didn't necessarily want to be Buddhist. They definitely didn't want to be coming along and chanting and doing anything else, you know. So by that stage, the monastery had sent me to teach in Moscow. I was working there, and I'd see people, just regular people, coming along at the end of the day after their work. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, there's this incredibly valuable skill that anybody can learn. But it was shrouded in mystery. Like, what would it look like if we demystified meditation? And I know now, like right now, it sounds like, well, it's been around for forever. It has been around for a really long time, about 2,500 years. But in terms of popular culture, it's actually not been around that long at all. So it was a really kind of big leap to think how we could demystify it. And a big part of that goes down to my co-founder, Rich Pearson. So he came from your world, the world of marketing. When I met him about 10, 11 years ago, he was really burnt out. I don't know if it's the same now, and I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but he tells me the world of agencies was incredibly stressful. So he came to me and he said, look, I need to learn how to meditate. I need to learn how to kind of calm down. He said, but equally, he said, I think you could do with some help with your clinic, and I think there's something really interesting we could explore here. And within a couple of months, we got on so well, we should do this. And I remember Rich saying to me at the very first meeting, he said, okay, this should be the Nike Plus of meditation. So this is a year after the App Store opened. Bear in mind, I'd been a monk. The internet had kind of happened while I was away. Still didn't have phone, didn't really know what apps were. So it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And so I said, no, that's a crazy idea. It's never going to work. And he reminds me frequently of that story. Now there's about, I think, 50 million people on the platform. But for a few years, he was very patient. We did events, we did books, and slowly, we got to the point of launching an app. As I say, right now we're at about 50 million people on the platform. And on the one hand, our focus is very much the core experience. For those of you who use it, you'll be happy to know we're working towards a much more personalized experience. When we began, I doubt there's anyone here who did. Was there anyone here who used the very first version of Headspace? V1 back in 2012. So it was just like it was a 365-day journey, and people would get sort of 6 months in, and it'd be like the relationship pack, for example. And then I'd meet people and I'd say, how are you finding it? And they're like, well, it's great. I've just broken up with my girlfriend. I can't wait 6 months till I do the relationship pack. So we moved to a different model. We made it kind of more like a library that you could explore. And then it became more difficult to navigate. So now we're moving towards a more sort of personalized model. But my hope is that we can get to a point with that core experience where we can meet people where they are, no matter what's going on in their life. And more than meditation. Meditation is a really important part of health, but it's just one part of health. And I'd really encourage you to think about how this works, not only in your personal life, but also in your working life. So increasingly, we work with companies at 350, 400 around the world. Some hundreds of thousands of people, some a lot smaller. But it's about how to bring that sense of ease, sense of focus, sense of productivity into your work. And I don't know about you, but the mind that I experience at home is the same mind that I carry into my working day, and the mind that I have at work is the same mind that I carry home with me in the evening. So I think it's really tempting to separate work and our personal life, but as much as possible, thinking about where meditation can be a useful tool throughout your life, I think is a better way to think about it. Probably the most, for us, it's been the most important thing. So it was two. There's authenticity, like where this stuff has come from. And then there's the science, making sure that it's evidence-backed. So probably our third, fourth hire at Headspace, our paid hire, was a scientist. And we now have a whole science team out in the US where we're based. There's about 15 of them working towards FDA approval so that doctors and nurses, therapists won't just be able to recommend Headspace, but they'll also be able to prescribe it. Health insurers will be able to pay for it. Our hope is that we can move towards that model in Europe as well. But I would really encourage you, when we started, there were no apps. There were no meditation apps in the App Store. We were the first one. Now there's more than 3,000. So I'd encourage you, whatever you choose to use, online, offline, investigate it. Make sure you know that it's authentic. Make sure you know that it's evidence-backed, that there is some sort of science underlying what's being offered. Yes, it's about how it feels, but I think increasingly it's also really important about, as I say, where it's come from and knowing that it's, that it works, that it's effective. Most people have no idea just what's going on in the mind, in the brain when we meditate. So it's not just that our thoughts go quiet. The brain itself is changing. It's changing the way the blood flow works. It's changing even the way the cortex in the brain is shaped. So as we meditate on a daily basis, we start to experience changes. And the parts of the brain responsible for feelings of happiness, well-being, focus, they receive more blood flow. They get thicker. They get stronger, even if we don't know, We're not going to feel it happening, but it's happening nonetheless. So have confidence when you're sitting there, even when your mind feels busy, that something is happening, that something is changing, and that you're taking the time to look after your mind, not just for you, but for the people around you, your family, your friends, people you work with. I think as I look around the world right now, increasingly, it's a very divisive kind of culture that we live in. There's a lot of divide. What I love about meditation is in that moment of silence, when you pause, when you stop, when you let go of your opinions, beliefs, and everything else, and focus on the breath, there is a sense of connection with everyone and everything. And that, I think, is an incredibly valuable thing. I know we wanted to leave some time for questions. So, yeah. Sure, yeah, let's do it. Oh.
Somebody told me doing a group meditation with 7,000 people in attendance would qualify for the Guinness Book of World Records. Is that true?
Someone told me that as well, and then I had to correct them that it's not true. Hey, I'm sorry.
I was hoping we would maybe go into the...
I did, so even a couple of months ago, we did 10,000 high school girls in LA, all came together to meditate for a session. But I think the biggest is in India. It's a festival called the Kumbh Mela, where millions and millions, tens of millions of people congregate. They don't all meditate at the same time, but they think that that's probably where the biggest meditation. But this is pretty respectable.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple, or like maybe the bar guests as well.
Sure.
Like mundane questions, very down to earth questions. Like, I mean, you have this story, and you explain where this is coming from. But like, I mean, in the end, it's still about marketing, right? You have to get this app out to the people. There's so much noise in the App Store. There's 3,000 other apps.
Yep.
Your business model has been discovered by other competitors.
Yep.
Like, what do you do now to just basically, plain and simple, generate downloads?
Yeah, so I think, look, we were very fortunate. Up until 2 years ago, we'd done no performance marketing. So we were 80% just organic kind of growth. The rest came from editorial. I think increasingly, over the last 2 years, the team have worked very much on that sort of performance marketing side. We look at it a little differently. We're not after just as many downloads as possible. So we're kind of playing, I mentioned the healthcare bit, we're playing the long game in that sense. So we're more interested in how this can become part of mainstream healthcare. And yes, of course, in the meantime, we need to remain as a sustainable business with a lot of downloads. But we're actually more interested in where we can go kind of within healthcare. So it's more about strategic partnerships with health organizations, with hospitals, than it is necessarily kind of consumer mass, as many as we can get.
How much? But you probably advertise on Facebook, on Google, right?
Yeah, I'm like the worst person to ask. You will not find a founder who's more disconnected with the everyday business running of the company. So I have a separate recording studio. I go there 4 days a week. I'm in the HQ 1 day a week for meetings. But I'm in enough meetings to know that we advertise on Facebook and Google.
And like just roughly.
Yeah.
What's the download worth to your company? If somebody downloads your app, what's the value of that for you?
I have absolutely no idea.
Seriously?
I'm like the worst interviewee ever. I'm sorry. So, and also, look, they occasionally they'll bring me into a management meeting because I think I bring a different point of view. It's good. Look, I get it. It's a company, and they have to focus on finance and data and everything else. I'm more interested in the experience of the user, like the experience of the member. I want someone to feel the benefit, and I know that if they feel the benefit, then they'll stay with us for a long time. So my focus is on how do we deliver that, and the other guys can worry about the other stuff.
Very good position to be in.
It's okay.
Yeah, very good position to be in. I mean, I'm in the position to host a little bit of a business conference.
Yeah.
So let me last try. Do you know like how much revenue the company makes?
I don't.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Is it like 100 million or is it 200 million or 50?
I know it's north of 100 million.
North of 100 million.
But I genuinely, I made a conscious effort at the very beginning. So Rich and I chatted. Rich said, I don't want to go out and talk about this stuff. He said, I don't like talk. He said, you do that. he said, I'll do the business bit. I said, I don't know anything about business. So Rich he's the CEO. He looks after the business. I'm a founder. I'm a meditation teacher. That's my skill set.
Okay. Guys at the bar, still questions from that angle then?
No, nothing business related.
Carolina, do you use Headspace, Carolina? Are you a Headspace user?
Yes, I've used it before. I mean, before I came on, I totally agree what you're saying. And I think it's cool to see, to really also understand your expertise and forte, like not pretending to do everything and knowing this is what I'm doing, this is my skill set, this is what I'm going to focus on, and let the other team members to do the other part. I mean, I'm also a co-founder of a new startup, which is not in meditation, but it is actually in kids' health, wellness, beauty space for children. And we are also a lot about inspiration, education, and empowerment. And as much as I like to do a lot of things, I know my space, the whole data and numbers, it is a new thing, and it's constantly evolving. And I think there has to be the bridge between tech, like numbers, tech, analytics, but also still not forgetting that humane experience, how things are being received, the little details. I mean, God is in the little details. And so that's what I love too. I love really always creating that experience, that feeling, that connection when you do something, whether it's pictures or creating, your company, and anything. It's super important and crucial, I think.
Okay. Further questions from the bar to Andy, maybe. Mathis, Yvonne, Armin, I saw you had a question.
I have a question about meditation. In
Sure.
rolling out your product internationally, do people meditate differently in different countries, or is that the only universal thing mankind has?
Do you know what? That's a great question. So obviously German's our first foreign language, but of those 50 million people, they're in 190 countries around the world. I personally believe that meditation is timeless, it's universal. I've been very fortunate to travel around the world. I've never yet met anyone in any culture who wouldn't want a greater sense of peace of mind, a greater sense of contentment and happier relationships in their life. I do think the way in which people use it is slightly different, and I think perhaps the reasons that people use it. So I think it's really important to say, look, meditation's been around for thousands of years. Thousands of years ago, there was no social media, there were no mobile phones, and it's really easy to sort of say, okay, it's because of technology that we all need it now. I think technology and social has kind of amplified the amount of noise in our lives and in our heads and created a greater demand and need kind of for techniques like this. And certainly in those countries where you see greater sort of technology adoption, we see much greater adoption of Headspace as well. Yeah.
Another question from the bar, Yvonne?
Can you come closer?
Of course I can. Sorry.
That was not the question. So,
yeah, that was an easy one. Thanks. Yeah.
could companies be more effective if people who work there would take time out each day to practice mindfulness, or is it just a wish?
No, well,
and I hope that my boss is in this room, so maybe 10 minutes.
Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, given what we do. I mean, so even at Headspace, we, at 10 o'clock and at 3 o'clock every single day, there's a no meeting kind of in the diary. And there's a group meditation that people can join, or they can go and do their own thing. There are meditation pods throughout the office where people can as well. When we go into companies and work, we work at a lot of different levels. Sometimes it's simply kind of making sure that everybody has access to the app. Sometimes it's more setting up sort of spaces. In those companies, there is such a level of confidence now that we're even moving towards a system of payment where it's results orientated, it's results based. So as long as people are doing mindfulness that we're recommending, so we'll only get paid if you get good results. So I think that in itself kind of speaks volumes as to just how much impact it can have in the workplace. But yeah, short answer is yes, a massive difference, and I hope that all workplaces adopt it in time.
Last question, Florian.
A personal question. I have this habit of running around every morning for 45 minutes in English garden, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always feel that for me, this is my form of meditation. Is it the same or not? Or is it different? Or do you fulfill the same objective with that?
If you're running?
Yeah.
So a lot of people will say kind of, so running is their meditation, swimming is their meditation. And I think there are elements of it that there's a quality of mindfulness that sometimes kind of comes about. The tricky thing is, if you're in the middle of, well, there's two things actually. One, if you get injured and you can't run, what do? But also, if you're in the middle of a really difficult conversation at work, like it's very difficult to say to the other person, excuse me, I'm just going to go for a run so I can relax. I'll come back and finish the conversation afterwards. If you meditate on a regular basis, all of a sudden, that feeling that you're able to experience in meditation, you can actually apply in real time to that difficult conversation, or if you are injured, or to another situation. So for me, I feel like they're things that work really well together rather than kind of one or the other. So I'd encourage you to do both if you have time. Yeah.
Andy, thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, man.